Okay, so one of my biggest tips for you is that at this point, the only real growth and progress left is internal. You've got to do some real inner work. And so in this video, I'm going to cover what that is, and I'm going to cover two sides or aspects of this process as I've used it and how I learned it. And in doing so, hopefully I can help you remember and basically reorient yourself so that you can also get back on your path or move further on it through any resistance that you're having, because we're all constantly falling back asleep and we're falling back into various habitual behaviors or mental loops that aren't really helping us. And so it's not that anyone is like failing at this, it's just that we continually need to work on ourselves and we need help remembering and to keep doing this inner work for whatever new layers of blocks or resistance come up in our awareness. So if you've ever wondered what it actually means to do the inner work, this video is for you. And some of you are already familiar and you've been doing some of this, but maybe you could be working more consistently or finding deeper insights. So in this video, I'm going to share a bit of a framework and go over a few concepts, and then I'll leave you with some suggestions for ways that you can deepen your work. So, and just quickly though, before I continue, I just want to have a quick aside to say welcome. If you're new here, I'm Shannon. And these videos I'm making to help other creative and gifted empaths on a path of reclaiming their own authenticity and stepping back into empowerment and alignment. And also this week, the channel crossed 1,000 subscribers. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who has given me a vote of confidence. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your interest and hope you keep finding useful insights here. Eventually, I am aiming to broaden this channel a bit to bring in other types of videos, especially interviews. So stay tuned for that. But definitely having like a really active and engaged audience is really going to help. So I appreciate your interest there as well. And last, at some point in the near-ish future, I'm going to be opening up some space for individual and group coaching. So if you think that that might be for you at some point, I have a link below the video and you can drop your email in just to get updates on coaching. Okay, so back to inner work. The way I approach this is based on how I've learned it, and it's to work on like two ends or two sides of this at once. So this probably isn't the best metaphor. I haven't found the best metaphor yet, but let's just imagine you are stuck in an underground tunnel. And for fun, let's just imagine this is like a tunnel within Plato's cave. And so you've got like dirt on both ends of this. You can't get out. And so what you need to do is you need to clear your way out in both directions. And on one side, you're going to clear out like all the old traumas and negative programming that you picked up just in virtue of like growing up here as a human, and not everyone's consciousness is fully elevated. And on the other hand, you've got to clear out this path forward of like walking towards your purpose and walking on your own authentic path. So by clearing out the dirt behind you, this lets light in, and yet it's not the direction you're headed. You still have to work on the other side as well so that, you know, you're actually on a completely new path and it's unique to you. So you still have to do all this work of clearing out what's blocking you. So these are all your limiting beliefs, particularly fears that your ego has constructed and erected for helping you survive. And so this is inner work because at the end of the day, it's literally a bunch of internal shifts that you need to make, and the very large fact that no one else can do this for you. So someone like me can tell you about what I did and how I see it, and others can give you really useful reminders of your own path. But these are really steps that we just have to take ourselves, like fully embodied and integrated with our own knowledge, our own consciousness, and we're really just making our own maps here because we can't use anyone else's map to show us our own path. So, and half of that again is also we all have different starting points, to say nothing of where our own higher self needs or wants us to head towards. So with this model in mind, it's effectively like it's all the same dirt, but the important point is knowing which direction you're headed and the fact that you're trying to bring in more light, which means you're creating an open channel basically for our energy and intuition to flow through, to not get stuck, or to not like block the light that you're meant to be receiving. And so in this way, we're each responsible for the curation and clearing or cleaning of our own energy. So let's just keep going a little bit more with this metaphor of being stuck in the underground tunnel. And then I promise we're done with that. So let's just imagine like this process of inner work, like using a wheel with scoops on it, right? So you can clear out the dirt as the wheel turns. And our job here is to keep this wheel moving. So what we're doing is rotating through 3 sets of areas. We can't just do one in isolation because that doesn't move the wheel. So it's just going to be the way we move through them all that really like keeps the energetic wheel turning. Okay, and here is where it's literal work, right? It's actual work meeting with the internal friction and debris, and this propels us forward. So don't worry if you like don't like the wheel metaphor. All I'm really doing here is I'm just trying to introduce like 2 lists of 2 triads basically. So there's 2 sets of 3 areas that we want to work on, and these aren't really in any order because it's a wheel. Again, remember, we want to keep rotating through all of these. So this is the way I'm kind of organizing it. So you've got self-regulation, self-observation, and self-validation. And self-regulation, of course, is everything that supports our physical, emotional, and mental bodies coming back into a place of health, of balance, and inner stillness and clarity. And so these are all the familiar practices we have, like yoga, energy healing, which these work on all levels, proper rest, nutrition, and so on. Maybe words of affirmation or kindness for helping yourself move through a trigger. So this element here is always about returning to energetic balance and inner clarity. Like you can see it like water coming to rest, coming to stillness, and then you can see all the way to the bottom, which brings in the second element, self-observation. So seeing yourself clearly, not just in the moment, but over time, and to actively study yourself, to study yourself objectively for the patterns you engage in, the projections you create, what work you avoid, how you talk to yourself, how you actually create change within yourself. And if you're lucky with this, like you'll get really powerful clarifications and sudden insights that can happen once like we really find a way to take a step back from ourselves and kind of view ourselves through our own eyes as an observer. And so this is where I'd put practices like shadow work, journaling, some dream work. This is observation, like more so than the mindfulness that I would place more in the category of self-regulation. Because again, mindfulness is more of like a moment-to-moment witnessing. And it's not like an active study. You're not meant to start taking apart your mental processes. You're not supposed to do effort in any way like that. Again, so we've got self-regulation, self-observation, and then there's self-validation. And I would say this is probably the most complex of these. And just by way of comparison, if we associate self-regulation with water and self-observation with the element of air and light, because of the qualities of objectivity and spontaneous understanding, then I'd link self-validation with fire, with its purificatory capacity and its alchemical nature. And we can see this alchemy working on the element of earth. So literally, yes, we're digging our way through, but earth here is not just an obstacle. So remember the cool proverb about the goat who fell down a hole, and some person is like throwing dirt on the goat, but the goat just uses the dirt as a stepping stone. Like he packs it down and eventually like he can just climb his way back out of the hole. And so that's how I'd see the dirt in our metaphor. We're transforming the element of earth, which corresponds to our body and to what we've literally been given here for this incarnation. It's the entire realm of formal phenomena. So it's not just illusion, it's literally our opportunity for transformation. And so the element of earth represents this transformation of form. And so self-validation includes all manners of like reclaiming, expressing, and affirming our authenticity, stepping into alignment with our higher self. And this can range from simple affirmations for helping you change your mindset to working on the most deeply creative things that bring you joy, even or especially if they're not tied to any economic function. And it can also include inner child work, working with your inner teenager, maybe past lives work, any modalities really where you're recovering aspects of yourself that were lost or which you suppressed on the path of survival. And so at its core, this is really akin to the path of individuation or the hero's journey mythology, where what we're doing is elevating ourselves from fear-based survival programming, from the limitations of our egoic past, and we're moving towards the highest expressions of ourselves in forms of joy, in beauty, in our deepest truth, and basically our authentic expression of our highest values. So there's already a lot of material out there on this work. You can find it in positive psychology, humanistic psychology, Jungian psychoanalysis, Italian psychosynthesis, anti-psychiatry movements. But in a way, you don't need any of these because it's my view that you can find quicker results or at least more lasting results with doing your work within the right group and or with a spiritual mentor that you really resonate with. So all that said, though, I'm the last person to discourage somebody to go on for their own independent study, read primary texts, go all out. I'm all about that. But just keep in mind the risk of getting lost or over-identifying with the concepts and then feeling like you're making progress when it might just really be still a distraction. So I know the line here can get really subtle, but just keep that in mind. I mean, I've definitely made important mental shifts myself in doing this kind of deep study, scholarly study. But the thing with that is that these types of insights may not last. Like you'll find that, you have to go back and reread it or study your notes again, or, 3 years later you come across the same text and just like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. So instead of that, I have just found that working through the modality of like direct perception and what I call like direct dialogue based on direct experience, and then also within a group setting where everyone else is also devoted to this process, I find this much more effective and robust for creating these types of internal changes, because you're actually receiving an energetic transference. In some sense, we are able to share frequency and our embodied knowledge in a very direct way when we're meeting like in person or in real time. So going back to the 2 sets of wheels that I mentioned, again, this is just metaphorical for keeping ourselves organized, but if the first wheel is this trinity of the self-regulation, self-observation, and self-validation, then I see the second wheel as kind of working at a 90-degree angle to this, or an orthogonal angle. And on this wheel, you have what I'd consider the 3 largest networks of our lower density emotional states: shame, anger, and fear. And these connect to everything, kind of like the primary colors. So probably all of our traumas, I think, can be accessed through one of these and through working with these core networks. So we might access any of them actually through any aspect of the first trinity that I mentioned. So for example, if you start pursuing a path of authentic joy, and you do this, for example, by launching the business that you've been planning for years, or you start in on your singing lessons finally, or you're going back for a degree, that kind of investment in yourself is highly likely at some point it's going to trigger like one of these core networks of resistance or some other type of block or old trauma. The closer you get to the light, the sharper the shadow is going to be, and it's going to come up for that kind of rebalancing. And the same is also true if we just fall into emotional or physical dysregulation. So some of these networks are going to be activated if we are extremely overtired, or if we are like 2 or 3 days into a detox, or even just after like a routine workout at the gym. This happened to me like after my father died. I would notice like I'd be going for a workout, and then afterwards I was like so activated and was just feeling all this anger. At the time, I just didn't really place it into the right context. And of course, in retrospect, it's more obvious. But, uh, you know, these kinds of things have a way of like getting really, really stirred up at the physiological level. So, and then again, the element of self-observation comes back in again here, where we can use this to sit and actively examine these triggers so we can bring in more awareness to it and respond differently. So you can see how these kinds of two wheels can really effectively work together. They're both running, and one can work on the material provided by the other. And so this is basically like the framework that I suggest working with. I found it useful, but I would just add 2 small points of clarification to this. So there's a reason for working with a model like this. And eventually, you might come up with your own, that's fine. But the benefit is that it keeps the larger picture in mind for you. So the point is to move into alignment with your higher self and with your purpose for this life. And we can't spend all of our time over identifying or getting lost in just one type of practice. As important as each of them are, it's just these are pieces for a whole puzzle. And so it can be easy for someone to like spend years just focusing on like nutritional detox or just doing inner child work, but maybe they are neglecting themselves physically. So this is what I mean by the wheels. By keeping them integrated, by keeping them like rotating together, you need to produce that kind of momentum on the friction to produce any kind of real work, which is change. And the second point here that I'd emphasize is that what we're doing when we are working to clear out these deep networks of shame, anger, fear, and everything they're connected to, we're not bypassing. This is not ignoring these feelings or suppressing them. It's the exact opposite. So we want to like fully feel the shame, to see all of its levels, to see like the places it originally entered. And then we learn to extract the information from this, and then it helps us respond differently in new situations. Because all that this is our own trapped energy. So alchemizing our shame isn't bypassing it just because we want to feel better things. It's actually changing the shape and the expression of our own energetic field. In contrast to that, bypassing is closer to what occurs under usual circumstances where a person hasn't really done much inner work. And so they've already bypassed the worst stuff in order to just keep on surviving or staying focused on the hamster wheel and so on. So to close things off here, I said I was going to give you a little bit of homework for coming back to a more conscious or explicit commitment to your own inner work. And so a good way to think about this is to make sure, again, you're working on both ends of this model. So something that's going to help you clear out the old programming while at the same time making sure you're taking steps on your own authentic path forward. So I would pick an activity for each of these components of the triad I talked about. For example, you might start with a combination of, nutritional healing, active journaling, and then taking the first steps on that big career move. That would encompass the wheel, and it would get it turning, and it would start integrating that. All of these things working together is what's going to produce real inner shifts. It will naturally bring stuff up that you need to clear out in order to move ahead. And so another combination might look like having a daily meditation practice to like regulate physiologically, mentally, and then along with working in a spiritual group or an inner circle with others doing inner work where you can practice self-observation. And all of this while you're doing and taking the courageous steps that you need to in order to leave like a relationship or a city that isn't working for you. So, and if you don't have any strong feelings or ideas either way on these, I would just recommend starting with a morning journaling practice of where you sit down for like at least 20 minutes, pen and paper, don't use devices, don't have social media nearby, and just sit in silence if you can, and just reflect on like what comes up in your awareness. So maybe your mind starts making a to-do list right away. That's fine. Just quickly write it down and then see what's the next thing that comes up. So maybe you start daydreaming about the coast of Portugal. That's fine. Just like write it down and then see what the next thing is that comes up. And in this way, you're kind of showing yourself that you're listening to yourself, you're witnessing yourself. And you will start bringing in higher guidance. You will start remembering what's beneath all of these surface layers. And, you know, and the point is to hold on to these pages then too, and then to come back to them maybe each week, maybe it's at the end of the month, and you want to really review these too, because you will start learning massive things about yourself, and about what you need to do and want to do. And I highly, highly recommend this. So not just the writing of it, but like actually reviewing it too, like take it seriously. This is like prime data, prime first person data. This is what so much of science is actually missing, and you really have like the front row seat to like what's actually happening with your consciousness. So for others who maybe you've already done a lot of these practices and you need something more advanced, or you want to see more movement, I would recommend really just digging in and finding like the courage or the self-compassion you need to really take some extra steps forward on your path, which is likely to involve like needing to move through some real fear, some heavy resistance. And if you already know where you're headed and you just have like a scary obstacle on your path, you know, this is your inner work. So to learn about this resistance, but ultimately to walk towards it, to walk through it, and it will tell you next exactly what the next steps are that you need to work on. So again, think of it like moving closer to your source of light. The closer you get to the light, the sharper, the deeper the shadow is going to look. It's literally becoming more present within your awareness so that you can face it and really start clearing out those energies. So I hope this gives you some ideas for what you can start in on. I know this is just scratching the surface. And again, I'm not saying that I'm like the best person for talking about inner work, but this is a framework that has really helped me because it's highly integrated. Again, it's not just focusing on, you know, one schema that, you know, you could spend years and years just doing inner work if you want, like, or inner child work. And what you really need is something integrated that keeps you like aware and fully integrated with your daily life and really keeps this wheel moving again, so you don't get lost or stuck in identification. So yeah, that's about it. And if you are interested in any of my group coaching going forward, this is one of the frameworks that I'll be drawing upon. So I'll probably point you back to this video and others that I make on parts of this. And again, the importance of doing this kind of inner work is that it will give you the fuel, the energy that you don't have right now to move higher. So, you know, the saying about you can't solve a problem on the same level that you created it. So a lot of inner work is actually going to take you deeper, but you're going to release like so much more energy that will become available to you and end up giving you a higher perspective on where you are and what you're doing. So thanks so much for watching. And again, I'll have a link below the video if you're interested in the coaching, and I will see you in the comments.